I never expected to fall in love again after being betrayed by the woman I thought was my soulmate. But life has a way of blindsiding you when you least expect it. This is the story of how I went from a bitter, angry divorcee to finding unexpected redemption. It's a tale of shocking betrayal and a journey that took the most unexpected turn when I found myself with a woman half my age. But to understand how I ended up in bed with a young lady, unaware of the shocking connection we shared, we need to go back to the beginning, back to when I thought I had it all figured out. Our life was good for a couple of years, maybe even better than our honeymoon days. Emma seemed happy, but not quite content. She started going on about all these fancy things she wanted, stuff our measly paychecks couldn't cover. She'd often bug me about whether my dad, who she thought was loaded because of his stake in the car dealership, could help us out more. I brought up the idea of starting a family, but Emma wasn't having it. She was dead set on waiting until we were rolling in dough before even considering kids. She had this whole plan of quitting her job to be a full-time mom when the time came. We'd been hitched for almost 2 years when shit hit the fan. My old man dropped dead from a heart attack at work. I was selling used cars when I heard a commotion in the service area. I rushed over just in time to see my dad take his last breath, moments before the paramedics showed up. I was completely wrecked. After losing my mom, he'd been my rock. My sister Anna had just wrapped up college a month earlier and was crashing at home while job hunting. She was also having a tough time dealing with Dad's death, but she's always been tougher than me. Emma had my back during the funeral prep and for a few days after. She didn't shed tears like Anna and I did, but she was there for me. But once the dust settled, she started pestering me about Dad's will and when it would be made public. It pissed me off, and I told her as much, but she kept at it. About 2 weeks after Dad kicked the bucket, Emma, Anna, me, and an aunt and uncle from out of town showed up for the will reading. I think we were all floored to find out Dad's share of the dealership was a measly 3% and he had a second mortgage on the house. Turns out he'd used the mortgage money to buy his piece of the dealership. Long story short, after his share was sold to the big boss at a price we couldn't haggle over and the mortgage was paid off, Anna and I were each left with about 10 grand. Emma didn't say a word, but I could practically see steam coming out of her ears. That was the end of her sympathy and support. She turned into a completely different person after that. I tried my best to rekindle our relationship, but Emma was cold as ice. 3 months after the will reading, I came home to our crappy apartment to find Emma gone and a note sitting on top of a stack of papers. The note was brutal. "Hey Alan, I want kids, but you can't support them the way I want. I'm out. I've taken more than half the cash from our pitiful bank account since I'm leaving you all the furniture. Don't try to reach me. Call my lawyer if you need anything. His name's on the divorce papers under this note. Good luck, Emma." Yeah, that's exactly what was under the note. A stack of papers asking for a divorce because we just couldn't see eye to eye anymore. I guess that meant I wasn't the cash cow she thought I'd be, so I wasn't worth sticking around for. I was just her first stepping stone to a better life. I tried to get in touch with her, but her lawyer kept insisting she didn't want to talk to me. My heart was in pieces because I really did love this woman. How could I have been so blind to the fact that she never loved me back? Thank God Anna was still in town and had a decent job. Since I couldn't afford the apartment on my own anymore, I sold off the furniture and crashed with her for a bit. If it wasn't for Anna, I probably would have lost it completely. For the next 6 weeks, I just went through the motions. Then I found out through the grapevine that Emma was shacked up with some loaded property developer and sporting maternity clothes. Now I was really pissed. I called her lawyer again and demanded to see Emma. He hit me with another bombshell. "Actually, Mr. Easton, I was about to call you. Emma's pregnant and is going to change her divorce petition to ask for child support." I was stunned all over again. I just signed off on a no-contest divorce, splitting our finances the way Emma had already worked out, with no alimony either way. In that moment, something in me snapped. "No more Mr. Nice Guy," I growled at her lawyer. "Tell that goddamn gold digger if she tries to get child support, I'll demand a paternity test right away and pull my consent for the divorce. I've heard there are ways to check paternity before the kid's even born. If it turns out to be mine, I'll foot the bill for the test. If not, she's paying for it and I'm filing for divorce on grounds of adultery and demanding child support and a new split of our assets. Got it, asshole? I yelled, slamming down the phone. I never got any official papers asking for child support because I knew damn well that baby wasn't mine. But now all my love for Emma had turned into pure rage and hate. When the divorce was finally over 2 months later, Anna came home from work to find me drunk off my ass and mumbling. Even through my booze-addled brain, I'd never seen her so pissed. She called me every name in the book and basically told me to get my shit together and be glad that slut, as she always called Emma now, was out of my life. Anna then shoved me into the bedroom, slammed the door, and yelled, "Don't come out until you sober up, dumbass." I passed out, wallowing in self-pity. When I woke up, I smelled bacon and eggs cooking. Anna was in the kitchen. I called both our jobs and told them we wouldn't be in until noon, she said, nodding for me to sit down as she put a plate of hangover food in front of me. "Why?" I asked, confused. "Because we're gonna have a chat, and it's probably gonna take a while to get through your thick skull what you need to do." "That's why," she said. Like I said, Anna was tough as nails. Within 2 hours, Anna had convinced me that I needed to move at least 500 miles away, get at least an associate's degree by going to community college at night, and either get over this bitch or get some professional help if I couldn't. Within a month, I was out of there. I moved to a place where construction was booming, got a job as a handyman, rented a cheap apartment, and signed up for night classes at the local community college, starting 2 months later. Once my body got used to manual labor, I realized I actually liked being in better shape than when I played soccer. I also figured out that my high school teachers were right to be disappointed in my grades because when I actually put in the effort at community college, I found out I could be a star student. Even with night school, I knocked out an associate's degree in civil engineering and business in just 2 school years and 2 summer sessions. I didn't date. I'd go out and party maybe once a week, though a few times I found someone to hook up with. But none of them held a candle to Emma, so they never made me think about her. In fact, I was kinda proud of how I'd pushed her out of my mind. 2.5 years after I moved, I landed a manager gig at the same construction company where I'd started as a laborer. I'd gotten tight with the foreman, and through him, the owner. They both thought I had potential. My paycheck was now 4 times what I was making when I first moved, and I'd managed to save a decent chunk of change since my community college tuition was next to nothing. The weekend after scoring my new job, I decided to treat myself by hiring an escort instead of just picking up a random hookup. I found an agency through a buddy who vouched for me, and I picked Renee from their website pics. When Renee showed up at my place at 8 p.m. Saturday night, she was twice as hot in person as in the photos. She locked the door behind her, and we sized each other up without saying much beyond, "Hi, I'm Renee," and "Hey, I'm Alan." Surprisingly, it wasn't awkward at all. My 2 wild nights with her brought up an unexpected problem. I started thinking about Emma again. I remembered how awesome my life had been back then, and how royally I'd been screwed over. All that anger and hate came flooding back. When my friends started calling me out for being an asshole, I realized what was up. My sister Anna told me I needed to see a shrink. After a year of sessions, my therapist, Dr. Bennett, told me I had more anger than any sane patient she'd ever had. Regular therapy wasn't enough. She said only a major event would snap me out of it. 9 years after leaving my hometown, my company considered me to open a new branch there. Anna filled me in about Emma. She dumped the realtor dude who stole her from me, had another kid, and was now married to some hedge fund guy. I rented a car at the airport to scout locations. Feeling weird with all the changes, I got a flat tire 20 miles in. I changed it myself and tossed the lug wrench on the floor. Stopping at a red light by a fancy private school, I saw 3 little girls in uniforms about to climb into a limo. The driver held the door open when suddenly, a black SUV screeched up. 3 guys jumped out, clocked the driver in the head, and grabbed the screaming girls, their backpacks flying everywhere. The kidnappers were back in the SUV with the 3 girls before the light even turned green. I didn't think twice. I floored it through the light, dodging 1 car in the intersection, and rammed the SUV. My airbag went off, and so did the SUV driver's, but he wasn't wearing his seatbelt and was groaning in the front seat as the airbag deflated. I grabbed the lug wrench, unbuckled, jumped out of the car, and sprinted to the SUV that had stopped. A guy with a gun stumbled out of the back passenger side, but he was wobbly, and by the time he fired, I was on top of him. I clocked him over the head with the wrench, and he crumpled to the ground. The third thug climbed out of the driver's side back door, put a knife to one of the terrified little girls' throats, and yelled at me to drop my weapon. I looked at him calmly and said loud and clear, "If you let the girl go, I'll let you walk. But you're not moving from this spot with her. If you hurt her, I'll crush your nuts before I kill you. You've got 10 seconds to decide, then I'm coming for you." With that, I raised my left hand, glanced at my watch, and started counting. 1, 2. When I hit 6, he let go of the crying girl and took off running. I chucked the wrench at him and felt like a badass when it nailed him in the back of the head, knocking him down. I jogged over, put my knee on his back, and yelled at the shocked people from the school across the street to call 911. Apparently someone had already dialed, 'cause the cops showed up 2 minutes later. When the cops arrived, 2 male teachers from the school were holding down the SUV driver, who was still moaning face down, and 5 or 6 parents or other teachers were comforting the 3 scared little girls. The cops quickly cuffed all 3 thugs. They were all loaded into ambulances while I was treated for a gunshot wound to my left arm that I didn't even realize I had until one of the teachers pointed out the blood to me. The guy with the gun was down and probably dying. The other 2 were banged up and bleeding, but not life-threatening. The limo driver was also treated at the scene. As the ambulances drove off and I was giving my statement to the police lieutenant, and the paramedic was finishing patching up my wound, I heard the hysterical crying of a woman running towards the 2 kidnapped girls screaming, "Mommy, Mommy." I took a couple deep breaths when I got a good look at her. Fucking Emma. Emma spotted me. After the initial shock, she ran up to me screaming, "You bloody bastard, Alan. I know you had something to do with this. I know you kidnapped my girls to get back at me, you piece of shit." Before I could react, she attacked me, hitting me with her purse. The cop restrained her, explaining I'd saved her kids, but she kept cursing. I saw the girls reunite with her as I left to give my statement. I insisted it be videotaped. The cops questioned how I got the wrench so quickly, easily verifying my story with my rental car. They asked me to stay longer, but I refused unless arrested. I demanded an assault warrant for the woman who hit me, threatening media involvement if denied. My sister Anna picked me up. The kidnapping story was all over the news, but they couldn't track me down. I consulted a lawyer about suing Emma and checked on her arrest. That night, everything changed. A TV station got security footage showing my face during treatment. They praised my bravery, and suddenly I was recognized everywhere. Reporters found me, and I gave brief interviews, downplaying my role. Emma somehow got my sister Anna's number and left a voicemail trying to apologize and meet up. I told Anna to delete it and tell Emma to back off if she called again. Before flying back, I met my new lawyer and signed papers to sue Emma for slander and assault. He was also pushing the prosecutor's office about Emma's arrest. Flying home, I felt smug, thinking more about suing Emma than saving those girls. At the office, everyone congratulated me on my heroics and the lucrative properties I'd found. My bosses took me to a fancy lunch where I enjoyed my newfound celebrity status. Back at work, I got a call from Bradley Simmons, a billionaire whose granddaughter I'd saved. He offered me his personal help for anything I might need in the future as thanks. He also took care of my wrecked rental car situation. I called the rental company and spoke with the president, Catherine Thames. She assured me I wouldn't be charged for the damage and even refunded my rental money. She admitted Simmons owned the company but insisted they'd have done the same regardless. Anna told me Emma kept trying to contact her. Finally, Anna answered and yelled at Emma to stop, threatening her with harassment charges. Emma then repeatedly contacted my attorney requesting a meeting, but he insisted everything would be handled formally. While I was enjoying putting the screws to Emma, it started to get pricey. I knew I'd have to show up for a deposition in the case I was suing for, and my attorney told me that Emma had the right to be there, though he could make sure I never had to talk to her directly. As I was trying to figure out what day would work best for me to do the deposition, the phone rang. "It's Mr. Simmons," my secretary said excitedly. "Wow," I thought, pulling myself together. "Hey, Brad, what's up?" I asked. "Great, Alan, and you?" "Well, aside from my legal battle with my ex-wife, things are good. Even that's going well since I'm making her sweat, but I don't love what it's costing me. I've got to go to a deposition and I'm trying to pick a date," I rambled. "Really? Ha," Brad said. I suddenly felt awkward. "Sorry, Brad, I didn't mean to dump all that on you. It's just that your call came right as I was looking at my calendar," I continued. "Well, Alan, we're having a bit of a coincidence here. I'm calling to tell you that the mayor wants to have a ceremony to honor you with the City Hero of the Year award. You could time it to coincide with your testimony and get reimbursed for travel," Brad said enthusiastically. "I'm not big on publicity, Brad. I've turned down dozens of interview requests, including from 60 Minutes. But I can't believe the city would pay my travel expenses anyway." "Ha ha ha, good point," Brad laughed. "I've got to be honest. I'll pay your travel expenses, but because the ceremony is really important to my granddaughter. Elsie insists that she wants to make a public speech thanking you, and I think it's good for both her development and healing her trauma. So I'm begging you to come. God, Brad, I really don't want to let you down, but I'm wary of it. I really don't like drawing attention to myself. It would be really uncomfortable for me." Brad interrupted me. "I get it, Alan, but here's the deal. If you come, I'll not only pay your travel expenses, but I'll also cover the attorney's fees for your lawsuit against your ex-wife, and I'll owe you double. I promise you the fact that I'll owe you twice as much will be very beneficial to you." I thought for a while, probably longer than I should have, since Brad said, "You still there, Alan?" "Sorry, Brad. I was just mulling it over. Actually, you've made it impossible to say no, but you really don't have to pay my attorney fees." "Fine, but I want to pay for your lawyer. I don't like how she's treating you. I didn't know you'd filed a lawsuit, but now that I do, I want to help. My secretary will give you instructions to pass on to your attorney and provide you with the potential dates for the ceremony. Looking forward to seeing you, Alan." "Thanks, Brad," I replied cheerfully. Life was looking up. My lawyer was the happiest guy I'd ever talked to when he called to tell me that Brad Simmons was covering all the expenses. His personal attorney told me to go all out and spare no expense as part of my ethical obligations. I'm sure my attorney saw his bills just double. No doubt he'll get it. The day before the ceremony, my attorney's office took my deposition. As expected, Emma Ashton was there. She tried to talk to me multiple times, and each time I did something super mature like covering my ears with my hands, while my attorney asked her not to speak to me. Finally, my attorney said to opposing counsel, "If your client tries to talk to mine one more time, I'm ending this deposition and you can explain to the judge why it should continue under these circumstances." Emma left the room in tears. I grinned broadly. The ceremony was awkward, but it was also cool to meet Brad in person. His granddaughter Elsie's thank you speech was the most adorable thing I'd ever seen in my life and brought tears to my eyes. Everything was perfect, right up until the end. After the ceremony, I was chatting with various people while holding my award. When I had just finished talking to the mayor and turned to leave, there stood Emma, Emma's second husband, and Emma's current husband, Kevin Ashton. I hadn't even realized they were there. I was shocked enough that Emma blurted out, "Alan, I really want to thank you for saving my girls," and I cut her off. Facing her, I said in a low voice, "Screw you, Emma. If I'd known they were your kids, I never would have saved them." And then turned to leave. I felt great, as that was the cruelest thing I could have said to her. That is, I felt fine until I saw her daughters standing off to the side with faces so shocked and sad that it was clear they had heard my comment. That's when I felt like a total piece of shit. The fact that two innocent little girls between the ages of 6 and 9 had heard my comment, which wasn't even true but was only meant to hurt Emma as much as possible, really ate at me. I was still thinking about it and how to make it right 4 days later when my lawyer called. "Two things, good news about the ruling and a settlement offer from opposing counsel," he said. "Shoot," I replied. The judge ruled that we can present evidence of how Emma left you with someone else's baby in her womb in our damages report. That's a big win, and it's going to put them on the defensive big time. Great, I replied. My attorney advised taking the $500,000 settlement offer, dropping both cases against Emma. I countered, demanding Emma admit her defamatory comments were untrue, a face-to-face meeting with her daughters, and yearly private talks between my lawyer and the girls until they turn 18. My lawyer grinned. I don't know what you're up to, but okay. 2 hours later, they agreed. I called Brad on his cell. Alan, I owe you twice over, so I'm happy to talk, Brad said warmly. I explained my plan for the meeting with Emma's girls, asking Brad to wire me $400,000. Wow, you're even better than I thought, Brad replied. My assistant will wire the money to your business attorney. Thanks, Brad. We're even, I said. This doesn't even count as one of my 2 debts, he chuckled. Emma and Kevin Ashton watched nervously as the lawyer escorted her 2 daughters, Elizabeth and Jamie Ashton, ages 9 and 7, into the empty jury room at the courthouse. I smiled warmly as the girls entered, shook their hands, showed them a trick I'd been practicing for a week to get them in a good mood, and then told them why I wanted to meet them. I wanted to tell you both face to face that I'm really proud I got to help you with those kidnappers. I know you heard me say something that wasn't true to your mom, and I wanted to make it right, I said, as I sat down and took each of their hands. Isn't that what you meant when you said you wouldn't have saved us if you knew who our mother was? Asked Elizabeth, starting to smile. No, that's not what I meant at all. You 2 are awesome, wonderful kids, and no matter who your parents are, I'd be proud to help you anytime. But I really don't like your mom for things she did to me in the past, and I said what I did just to hurt her for how she hurt me before. But I'd give my life to save you too. Why don't you like our mother? Asked Elizabeth, pushing back her beautiful strawberry blonde hair that was covering one of her sparkling blue eyes. It's not something you need to worry about. You just need to know that it has nothing to do with either of you, I replied, as warmly as I could. After that, the conversation flowed easily. Time flew by, the 15 minutes were up, and I asked Emma's attorney for another 5 minutes. He agreed. Girls, to show you how happy I am that I got to help you, I'm giving each of you a gift. Mr. Ames, my attorney, has enough money so that you both can pay for your college education, no matter what happens to your parents. If you ever need money for anything college-related, just give him a call and he'll take care of it for you. Here are 2 of his business cards for you. Mr. Ames will call you on this day every year until you graduate from college to see if you need money and how you're doing. My friend Elsie told me college costs a ton of money, Elizabeth said, eyes wide. Yeah, it does. That's why I'm giving Mr. Ames the money, so you both can go no matter what happens. Both girls hugged me and kissed me on the cheek. There was a tear in Elizabeth's eyes. One more thing. Here are matching rings for us. I've already given one to your friend Elsie. They're supposed to show that we have a forever friendship because I helped you and you've helped me by giving me more joy than I could ever imagine, having had the honor of helping you, I said. With that, I slipped a multicolored plastic ring on the ring finger of each of their right hands, even though it was too big for them, and put another identical ring on my right pinky finger. They smiled, gave me another hug and kiss, and left the room. Emma's lawyer was floored. He almost fell over when he looked at his copy of the trust agreements that set aside $200,000 for each of the girls to be doubled in 10 years and put in trust for their education, with the rest going to them when they graduated college. I was a bit shaken up, so my attorney and I sat in the jury room for about 5 more minutes before getting up to leave. When we walked out, it was clear that Emma's attorney had explained to her and her husband what had gone down, and she was sobbing on the verge of passing out. To any normal person, this would mean that she was blown away by my generosity and knew that even though I hated her, I loved her kids a lot. Whether those were really her emotions, I'll never know, because I just walked away, giving a little wave to Elizabeth and Jamie. Right after my 42nd birthday, I moved back to my hometown. In the 12 years since I'd settled my lawsuit against Emma, I'd seen my therapist once a year, by which time she said that my hatred and anger toward Emma was totally under control. But I still wasn't in a serious relationship. This bugged my shrink, but she had no solution other than the possibility of some lucky break that would help me get over this last hurdle. I'd been working for Brad Simmons on special projects for the past 11 years and was pretty close to becoming a rich man myself. Now Brad was pushing me to open a business for him in my hometown. Since I didn't have the fear of running into Emma that I had 12 years ago, I was looking forward to it because I could see Anna, Jeff, and my awesome 11 and 9-year-old niece and nephew way more often. As part of the process of setting up a new business, I hired a PR firm. A 22-year-old woman named Betsy Destino was assigned to me. At first I was bummed that they'd given such a young person, fresh out of college, to my account, though the president of the PR firm swore she was the best person for the job and that he'd replace her if I wasn't happy. When I met Betsy, I was shocked. At first she seemed familiar, but I soon realized that I couldn't have seen anyone like her before. She was the most gorgeous woman I'd ever seen in real life, aside from Emma and Renee. She had long blonde hair, sparkling blue eyes, a cute upturned nose, full lips, a body like out of Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, and she was the definition of bubbly and friendly. Betsy was also a hard worker and had great ideas. I spent more time with her than I should have because I was just fascinated by her. But the company got off to a killer start as a result. Almost every day I asked myself, why couldn't I have met someone like her when I was 21? Her habit of touching my arm when she laughed almost made me cream my pants. When her 3-month contract with the PR firm ended, it was a sad day for me. I would have loved to keep her on the job, but her company had other plans for her and I couldn't justify it if Brad asked me about it. As Betsy and I said our goodbyes in my office, she rocked my world. "Now that I'm not working for you anymore, you could take me out to dinner and a show," she said, looking me straight in the eye like a cobra. I stammered. Before I could answer, she hugged me tight, whispered in my ear, "Call me or I'll haunt you," and then, parting her lips, slipped a piece of paper with her cell number into my hand. That evening, I invited myself over to Anna's house for dinner. The kids were pumped to see me and the gifts I brought them. "Stop spoiling them," Anna scolded as they ran around the house clutching their latest treasures from Uncle Al. After dinner, as Jeff was putting the kids to bed, Anna said, "What's up?" "I know that look. You want to talk?" "Yeah, I do," was all I said as we walked hand in hand into the living room. Anna was the only person on earth I trusted to be completely honest with me. Our love for each other was so deep that nothing could break it, allowing us to be totally frank. I told her about Betsy for the first time, even showing her a picture. "I think I've seen this woman, but I can't place her," she said, looking puzzled. "She's obviously a 10 in the looks department. And her personality matches her appearance." I picked up on that. Then I told her what Betsy had said to me and showed her the piece of paper with her phone number and a little heart on it. "Anna, be straight with me. Is it possible this woman actually finds me attractive? I'm more than 20 years older than her and she could probably get almost any straight guy she wants." Anna looked at me intently. Then she replied seriously, "Alan, you're good looking, in great shape, and loaded. It's possible. True, the odds are still less than 50-50, but it's worth a shot. In fact, I'd say if you don't try, you're a fucking idiot. Just don't get your hopes up too high and keep your expectations realistic every step of the way." I grinned, stood up, pulled Anna to her feet, and gave her a big hug and kiss. "Anna, you're the best. Thanks for the grub. I gotta make a phone call." I walked out of the house to Anna's laughter as she closed the door behind me. When I went on my date with Betsy that Saturday night, I was nervous as hell. Within 5 minutes, she had me at ease with her smile, sparkling eyes, easy conversation, and touching. Lots of touching. We had an awesome dinner. The conversation flowed like we were old friends. She held my hand for most of the show. As we were driving home, she put her hand on my thigh and said, "How about we spend the night at your place?" Her look could have melted steel. When we got to my condo, we went straight to the bedroom. The next 14 months were the best of my life. Although Betsy occasionally reminded me that we weren't exclusive and that if she ever got engaged, our thing would end, she was the most loving, most beautiful, aggressive, vibrant woman in history. She was a virtual goddess. Betsy usually went on dates on Fridays and Saturdays, and sometimes went on weekend trips out of town. We almost never talked about her other lovers. We went to dinners, shows, charity events, and even one 3-day weekend at the most expensive resort on the East Coast. I felt so good and was so satisfied with my life that I started dating, too. I found several women 5 years younger and 5 years older that I enjoyed being with. I never tried to compare them to Betsy, as that would be totally unfair to them. Thursday night, Betsy sat me up in bed and said, "We need to talk." "Okay," I said, taking her hands in mine and noticing for the first time the ring on her right pinky finger. It was too dark to make out what it looked like. "You've heard me mention Eric, and you met him once, right?" she asked. I'd run into Betsy and the 6-foot blonde guy she introduced as Eric one Saturday night at a restaurant when I was with a date, and Betsy sometimes talked about him. "Sure," I replied, realizing where this was going. "Well, he proposed to me. I'm in love with him and I'm gonna say yes to him on Monday," she said, looking me in the eye. "If you're in love with him, why haven't you told him yes already?" I asked with a lump in my throat. "Because I told you when I first started hooking up with you that once I got engaged, our thing would be over, and I want to have one last fling with you. I want to take you to a resort this weekend so you can properly say goodbye to me." "Wow," I replied, completely stunned. "That'd be great, but you don't have to pay," I said when she interrupted me. "I'm paying. I've got plenty of cash. But I need to fully open your eyes first, so don't say yes just yet," she said. Betsy then turned on the bedside lamp and brought her pinky finger up to my face. The light from the lamp highlighted a plastic multicolored ring. My mind was reeling when she said, "I'm Elizabeth Ashton. Destino is the Italian word for fate, and I only use it as a business name." Never in my life had I been so speechless. Emotions flooded my brain and body, and all I could do was stare at her with my mouth hanging open. She realized I couldn't speak and kept going. "I never got the chance to properly thank you for saving my life and my sister Jamie's life. I was obsessed with the fact that you not only saved me, but you gave me a trust fund of $200,000. I had to know more about you." I noticed tears in her eyes, and mine started to get misty too. "When I was a teenager, I got a transcript of your testimony from your attorney, making him swear to never tell you. When I saw how my mom treated you, I was shocked and ashamed. That's when I decided I'd never, ever be like her. Even though she truly loved me and did her best to raise my sister and me, I've never been able to look at her the same way since." Betsy, Elizabeth, continued, taking a deep breath. "I decided to make up for how badly she treated you, so I figured I'd have some fun with you. I found out you're an amazing guy and lover, and kept it going both for my own enjoyment and as a way to say thanks, and I've tried to never mislead you about our long-term chances." Finally, I managed to speak. "You're incredible," was all I could mutter, as I hugged her tight. After a few seconds, Betsy pushed me away, wiped my tears, and said, "So does this mean you'll go away with me for the weekend, and let me spend some of the more than $300,000 I have left from the trust you set up for me?" "You've given me the greatest gift anyone could give," I told her, starting to come to my senses. "You gave so much of yourself that you turned my life around. There's no more hate and anger in my heart, only love and peace. I'd be honored to spend one last weekend with the most beautiful person inside and out in the world." That Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning were the most bittersweet days of my life. I wasn't outwardly sad, even though I had to admit I was in love with Betsy. It was because I was so happy for her and grateful to her. True to her word, Betsy never contacted me again after she accepted Eric's proposal, though we stayed good friends. She even introduced me to my fiancée, C.E. Grace, a widow 2 years younger than me who runs the charity where Betsy worked. I didn't see any need to tell Grace anything about Emma, since she was no longer part of my life now. Grace and I went to Betsy and Eric's wedding 9 months after Betsy said yes to Eric's proposal. Of course, I knew I'd see Emma there, but since I didn't have any hate or anger left in me, I wasn't worried about it. It was a beautiful ceremony and a rocking reception, and I was over the moon happy for Betsy. At the reception, I noticed Emma was avoiding me. I'm sure she thought I'd bite her head off again if she tried to talk to me. Just before Grace and I left, though, I tracked Emma down. She looked shocked when I approached her, having interrupted a conversation with one of her friends and was clearly bracing for trouble. "Emma," I said, looking her straight in the eye and holding both of her hands. "I have to give you props for raising the most amazing woman in history. Elizabeth is one in a million. I'm sure she could never have become the fantastic person she is if you hadn't been her loving mom. All the best to you." With that, I turned around and headed towards Grace, leaving Emma standing there in stunned silence. As I got to Grace, she said, "I think Betsy's mom wanted to say something to you. She was reaching out her hand as you were walking away, and I think I saw her mouth. I'm sorry." What could she have been apologizing for? "No idea, babe," I answered Grace, quickly ushering her out of the ballroom. "Maybe she thinks